promised to the Duke since birth, but on their wedding day, he chose her younger sister instead. A true story. She had known about it her whole life. Not the way you know your favorite color or the name of your street. She knew it, the way you know something that was decided before you had a voice, before you had a choice, before you even understood what choice meant. She was 4 years old when her mother first told her. They were sitting in the kitchen, late afternoon, the kind of light that turns everything golden and slow. Her mother was braiding her hair and she said it so casually, like she was telling her what was for dinner. "You are going to marry the Duke's son someday. It is already settled." She did not cry. She did not ask why. She was 4. She just nodded and held still so her mother could finish the braid. That was the beginning. She grew up careful. That is the only word for it. She learned to walk a certain way, talk a certain way, sit at a table without slouching, pour tea without making a sound. She read the books her mother chose for her. She wore the colors her mother said were appropriate. She practiced being the kind of woman who would be worthy of a duke's son, and she was good at it, because she had never been given a reason to be anything else. His name was Rehan. She met him for the first time when she was 12 and he was 16. He came to their house with his father for a formal visit. She was brought into the drawing room, introduced, and then asked to serve the tea. She poured it perfectly. His father nodded approvingly. Rehan looked at her the way you look at furniture, not unkindly, just without real interest. She went back to her room afterward and sat on the edge of her bed and told herself that it was fine, that this was how things were done, that feelings would come later, after the wedding, after they had lived together and built something. Her mother had said so. Her aunts had said so. Every woman in her life had said so. She believed them. The years passed. Rehan visited a handful of times. He was never rude. He always remembered her name, which she told herself was something. He asked her opinions occasionally, which she told herself was more than something. By the time she was 23, and the wedding was officially being planned, she had a whole list in her head of things she told herself were enough. Her younger sister Rania was different from her in the way that water is different from stone. Rania laughed at things their mother said were not funny. Rania forgot the rules not because she was stupid, but because she genuinely could not understand why they existed. She was 4 years younger and 10 times lighter, not lighter in a small way, but lighter the way a room becomes lighter when someone opens a window you did not even realize was closed. They loved each other. That part was never in question, but they were not the same kind of person, and they had never been promised the same kind of life. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in April. The dress had been fitted 3 times. The flowers were ordered. The venue was booked. Their mother had already started crying in the proud way, the way that means everything is going exactly as planned. 2 weeks before the wedding, Rania came to her room. She came at night, after their parents had gone to sleep, which was itself a signal. Rania never came at night. She stood in the doorway for a moment before walking in and sitting on the floor. Not the bed, the floor. And pulling her knees to her chest, like she was trying to make herself smaller. She said, "I need to tell you something." The story she told was not complicated. It was not the result of scheming or planning. It was just a thing that had happened quietly over 18 months, in small moments, in accidental conversations, in the kind of closeness that grows between 2 people before either of them has decided to let it. Rehan and Rania had fallen in love. She sat on her bed and listened to all of it without saying a word. She looked at her hands in her lap. She noticed, for no reason, that her left thumbnail had a small crack in it that she had not seen before. She thought about how she should probably file it down before the wedding. Then she realized what she was doing. Rania was still talking, explaining, apologizing, using the word sorry so many times it started to lose its shape, to become just a sound. She was crying quietly, the way people cry when they think they don't deserve to cry loudly. Finally, Rania asked her, "Do you hate me?" She thought about it honestly. "No," she said, and it was true. That surprised her more than anything else. The wedding did not happen, not the one that had been planned anyway. There were phone calls and meetings and long silences at the dinner table. Their mother did not take it well, not the cancellation but the reason for it. She used words like disgrace and embarrassment, and once, terribly, your fault, though it was not clear which daughter she was speaking to. She moved through those weeks the way you move through very cold water. Everything was slow and muffled. She was not broken. She kept waiting to feel broken, the way she had heard heartbreak described, the way it was supposed to arrive like something physical and overwhelming. It did not come like that. What came instead was something quieter and stranger. She started noticing things she had never paid attention to before, like the fact that she had spent years learning to be a wife and almost no time learning to be herself, like the fact that she had opinions, real ones, not the careful ones she had practiced, that she had never said out loud to anyone, like the fact that the future she was grieving was not really hers. It had been built around her, measured to her, but it had been built by other people's hands. She did not know what to do with that realization at first. She packed a bag and went to stay with an aunt in another city. Not to escape, or not only to escape, but because she needed to be somewhere that did not have her mother's voice in every room. That aunt was a woman who had never married. She had a small apartment full of books and plants, and she cooked too much food, and she did not ask questions. She just made tea and put a cup in front of her and said, "Take as long as you need." She stayed for 3 months. In those 3 months, she did something she had never done before. She made decisions, small ones at first, what to eat, what to read, what time to sleep, then bigger ones. She looked at the skills she had been trained in, organization, management, hospitality, the quiet work of keeping complicated things running smoothly, and she realized that the same skills that had been used to make her a good wife could make her very good at other things entirely. She started working for a small event management company. She was not good at it immediately. She made mistakes, real ones, the kind that cost time and money, but she was not afraid of the mistakes the way she had once been afraid of everything, because now when she made a mistake, it was her mistake, not a crack in someone else's plan for her, just a thing that happened and had to be fixed. That felt different. That felt like hers. About a year later, a journalist writing about arranged marriages in changing times reached out through a contact. They wanted to speak to women with personal experience. She said yes. She was not sure why. Maybe because she had spent her whole life being quiet, and she was curious what it would feel like to say things out loud. They met at a small restaurant near her new apartment. The journalist was younger than she expected. She had a notebook and a careful way of asking questions that left a lot of room in them. At one point she asked, "When did you realize you had never actually wanted this for yourself?" She was quiet for a moment. She thought about the braids and the tea, and the list of things she had told herself were enough. "I think I always knew," she said slowly. "I just did not know that knowing was allowed." The journalist wrote that down. Then she asked, "Do you feel cheated?" She thought about Rania, about the shaking hands and the floor, and the word sorry said 11 times. She thought about Rehan at the altar she had never reached, the way he had looked at her the first time like furniture. She thought about her mother, who had done what her own mother had done because she genuinely did not know that things could be done differently. "I feel like I was handed a map," she said, "to someone else's destination, and it took me a long time to put it down, but I did put it down, and now I am figuring out where I actually want to go." She paused. "That is not cheating. That is just a late start." The article came out 2 months later. She read it on her phone over breakfast in her own kitchen, in her own apartment, in her own city. It was strange to see her words in print. Strange, but not bad. A few people she did not know sent her messages after. Women, mostly. They said things like, "This is my story too, and I needed to read this." She replied to every one of them. Rania and Rehan got married quietly, with a small ceremony, almost a year after the original date. Her mother asked if she would attend. She thought about it for a long time. She went, not for Rehan, not even entirely for Rania. She went because not going would have meant that what happened had taken something from her, and she had decided, sometime during those 3 months at her aunt's apartment, that she was not going to let it take anything more than it already had. She sat in the 3rd row. She wore a blue dress she had chosen herself. She did not cry. Rania caught her eye once, across the room, and mouthed something. She was not sure what it was. Thank you, maybe, or sorry, or just her name. She nodded and looked away. That was enough. That night she walked home alone through the city, which was loud and bright and completely indifferent to her, and she thought about the girl who had sat still in a kitchen at 4 years old while her mother braided her hair and decided her future. She thought about how much that girl had been through to become this woman walking these streets. She thought that girl deserved better. She thought, this woman is going to give it to her. She turned the corner toward home. The street was familiar now. She had chosen it herself. People sometimes asked her later, friends, the journalist's readers, women who emailed her after the article, whether she was angry, whether she blamed Rania, whether she blamed Rehan, whether she lay awake at night replaying the moment she found out and feeling the kind of rage that burns a hole through your chest. Honestly, no. Or not anymore, at least. There had been something sharp in those first weeks. Not quite rage, but something close to it. A hot, wordless thing she had no name for. But it had not been aimed at Rania or Rehan. It had been aimed at the years, at the waiting, at the version of herself who had spent a decade shrinking to fit a shape someone else had cut out for her. That was the real loss. Not the wedding, not the title, not the life that had been planned. It was the time, the years she had spent becoming careful when she could have been becoming herself. She forgave Rania. She decided that on her own, without being asked to, and she told no one about the decision because it was not the kind of thing that needed an audience. Forgiveness, she had come to understand, was not something you gave to the other person. It was something you gave yourself, so you could stop carrying the weight of their mistake in your own chest. She still thought about the girl in the kitchen sometimes, the one holding still while her future was being decided above her head. She hoped that girl knew, wherever she existed in memory, that it had turned out okay. Not perfect, not easy, but hers. That was enough. That was more than enough.